Hello everyone, welcome back to Out of Spec Guide. I'm Max, and we're joined today by a viewer and fan of Out of Spec, but also just a normal person shopping for an EV. This is our friend John. Hello.
Oh, hi Max, thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank Max, Ryan, and the Out of Spec team for all the great content out there. And to the extent I know about EVs, a lot of that is due to Out of Spec and the work that you guys put out there. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, appreciate you being a fan as well. And also, you basically sent me an email with some really good reasoning between your EV decision. So you're getting your first electric car, and you right now drive a Toyota Tacoma, right?
Yes, I do.
So you want kind of a lifestyle vehicle. You get out there, you're a frequent skier, you live in Colorado like us. You actually live very close to my neighborhood. So you're in this moment of like, how do I pick a reasonably priced, affordable EV? And it sounds like you've settled kind of in two camps. There's used Polestar 2, which is what I did. And then there's like my colleague Ryan's car, a new Tesla Model 3 or a Model Y with all of the sweet incentives those have right now.
Doing the research and a lot of good information out there, but my primary use case is going up into the mountains during the winter, probably twice a week. During the summer, like to do the mountain biking here, heading up into the hills right behind us, and that would be maybe once a week or so going up there in the mountains. And I don't really want to spend a lot of money right now on an EV because it looks apparently to me anyway that the market is pretty much in a state of flux. A lot of new information out there, you know, companies, Toyota, talking about their solid state battery, you know, very technically sophisticated compared to what we're seeing right now.
But always a few years down the horizon.
And so I'm looking at the $30,000 to $40,000 price range, not getting overly invested, and then maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, looking at something that could reasonably replace my Tacoma, particularly for the off-roading in more remote areas. So to do that, you know, you need quite a good range, quite a bit of ground clearance, and obviously neither of these have that. But in the interim, I think they could work well for my use case that I discussed previously.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in your position, they're looking at the market with all of the products coming on and all of the price fluxes and changes, and it's kind of freaky and scary. So hopefully we can help. You know, your reasoning I think is really good for helping calm people down, and Ryan and I can help you with our car's experience decide which way you're leaning. So let's get into it.
So John, you're looking at EVs in the $30,000 to $40,000 range. Of course, the Model 3 is going to come up. So can you tell me a little bit about what your impressions are and why you might like it?
Well, the primary reason for liking the Model 3 is the price. Living here in Colorado with the additional $5,000 discount, that's quite nice in addition to the federal. And one of the things that's pushing my decision a little bit now is Tesla is talking about not fully qualifying for the federal discount at the end of the year. So obviously you have to take delivery to claim that. And that actually gets the Model 3, the items I'd be looking at, down below $30,000, which is pretty sweet. And obviously Tesla has great tech, cheap price, so that's why it ended up in one of my decision points.
Certainly, and I have to 100% agree with you there. That is what drove me toward the Model 3 as well, especially in Colorado with the incentives. You can get $12,500 off the sticker price, which is a game changer. And like you mentioned, very good tech, and I definitely agree with that. I'd also say that it's got solid charging and solid range. And of course, a big benefit with Tesla is you get to use the Tesla supercharging network, which tends to be quite a bit more reliable than a lot of the other CCS networks. So of course, we've talked about some of the positives. What are some of the negatives or some of the reasons why you're a bit hesitant about the Model 3?
Yeah, so I do have some limited experience with Tesla. I've driven my daughter's Model Y with full self-driving enabled. I've also test driven the Model 3 at their local center. It's a nice handling car. I appreciate that part of it. The one thing that does give me some pause, so particularly with an electric car, with the new technology, my perspective is I want the car to help me. I don't want to be trying to outguess what it's trying to do. And yeah, unfortunately, driving my daughter's Tesla, I think, driving it for one day, I had 3 to 4 of those phantom brakings for various reasons, seeing cones, shadows on the road, sun hitting the sensors. I was kind of surprised that in one day I hit all of the use cases for phantom braking. And it just made me a little bit nervous driving. And my perspective was a high-tech car. I wanted it to be helping me. So that was the negative that I saw with Tesla.
Yeah, that's, I think, a super reasonable perspective. And honestly, I can 100% understand where you're coming from. I've had plenty of experience working with both Tesla Autopilot and other autopilot type systems. And there's a lot of things that Tesla does well, but a lot of stuff that it does pretty poorly. And genuinely, I don't trust the system as much as a lot of other systems. It does a lot of things that are just kind of random. The phantom braking, like you mentioned, just slamming on the brakes out of nowhere. A lot of that stuff can be pretty concerning, and I can absolutely see how that would give you a lot of hesitation about driving it. Well, we've talked a little bit about the Model 3, and now we've stepped inside. I think it's a great opportunity to talk a little bit about the technology, which is, in my opinion, one of the biggest strengths of Tesla. So can you tell me a little bit about your position and what you think about both the interior design and the technology specifically right here?
Yeah, the technology's great. Big, bright screen, nice wide map, which again can lead you to get too involved in the map, perhaps in some cases. But other than that, it's the inside of the car obviously is very clean, very minimalist. Yep, 2 coffee cup holders, so that's great. And charging for any cell phone, so that's also a nice feature.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's a nice interior, as everyone knows, extremely minimalist, and the materials are pretty nice and it's pretty comfortable. There's not a whole lot that's just going to blow you away, and also, in my opinion, not a lot that's just going to be absolutely terrible, save for the fact that you have to go into the screen to open the glove box.
I didn't know that. I could imagine it takes at least a year or two to get fully used to all the features and appreciate them on the screen here.
Certainly, there's hours upon hours of settings and
Playing
things
around
that you can do up here. And one of the things that you brought up was just the center screen and the lack of a driver's display. And I thought that's a really good point. Being honest, I have gotten used to not having one in front of me, but it's worse. I would much rather have a driver's display, heads-up display, something in front of me. And I think it's a pretty fair criticism to say that it doesn't feel like the car is always helping you drive better.
Yeah, I fully appreciate your point in that you get used to things, and that's one of the pros versus cons that I'm going through and trying to make my decision is crazy amount of functionality here, but is it worth the learning curve to get up there? And will I find myself playing around with it while I'm driving, where what I really need to be doing is focusing on something just straight ahead of me? So that's one of the trade-offs that I'm personally trying to make.
I think that's a really great way of putting it. It seems like it's prioritizing technology over driving in a lot of different ways. And I don't think that's necessarily the case in the Polestar 2 in a lot of ways. So it'll be really interesting to see and compare and contrast how that differs.
Okay, John, so that was your kind of experience and your impressions of the Tesla. Sounds like, very technologically sophisticated car, very appealing car with all the price cuts. There's also discussion of new Teslas, the upcoming Highland refresh for the Model 3. Sounds like that wouldn't really be a game changer for you so much, because for you, you're just looking at this from a price perspective, and that will, if Europe is any indication, probably be like $1,000 more expensive, and we have to wait months for it in the US. We don't know when it's going to come out here. Probably pretty shortly, but it's not changing the equation much for you. The same kind of bones you have about the technology and the screen and the interface. So we get into my Polestar 2, and John, you were looking at a Polestar 3 earlier, their upcoming SUV, which I think appealed to you because, had some ground clearance, looks really nice, lots of technology, but it's been delayed. The price of that is probably going to be well north of 80 grand. So you're looking more at used Polestar 2s, which are comparable in price to cars like Ryan's, a base Tesla Model 3 or a base Tesla Model Y now, which is around $43,000. So when you're considering used Polestar 2, why are you comparing this with a Model 3? What's appealing about it to you?
Yeah, so the Polestar, I've been lucky enough to rent a couple of times, I think 3 times with Hertz. So I have had the experience of renting them. And previously, I have owned a Volvo, so the styling, just really love the styling about the Polestar. Looks good. In my experience, the driving I've found very easy, very smooth, good performance. And so that's why all of a sudden the Polestar 2 started coming onto my radar. And as Max has previously discussed on some of his videos, right now there's quite a few very reasonably priced Polestar 2s coming on the market, 1, 2, 3 years old, that
under 40 grand.
under 40 grand,
Yeah.
and particularly the ones coming off lease. Some of them rentals, some off business leases, are actually in very good condition and not really that much different from buying a new car. And particularly the warranties, 4-year warranty. So if you buy a 2-year-old car, you'll still have a minimum of 2-year warranty left. So that, all of that put together made looking at the Polestar pretty appealing.
Yeah, there is a refreshed new Polestar 2 that I've had the chance to drive, and it makes some changes. It's not massive. Sounds like because that's not eligible for an incentive unless you lease and they pass on the commercial credit, which I don't think you would do. You'd be buying or financing. It sounds like used firmly was the decision that you had in mind.
Yeah, the new Polestar 2, looking at the specs, looks very, very nice. Increased range, increased charging speed.
Only on the single motor.
Only on the single motor. But the pricing on that, you're getting well north of 50,000, potentially even above 60 for the packages that I would like to get on the Polestar.
So it sounds like you would want the dual motor Polestar. And the hang up with the dual motor Polestar, like you were talking with Ryan about how the Model 3 has great charging, great range. The Polestar 2, because Polestar signed that a deal with Tesla, will have access to superchargers next year. The charging performance on it is okay. The range and the efficiency have never been strong. And it sounds like you understand that. Like because I have the performance pack and the large wheels, I get, in winter, probably I'll get less than 200 miles of range. And that is just a reality with this car. So you specifically, I think, would be looking at one that doesn't have the performance pack. You do want Pilot and Plus, which are the other 2 options, getting their self-driving, which is not as ambitious as Tesla's, and yet it sounds like a little bit more consistent and reliable from your experience. The Plus pack for the glass roof, heated seats and everything. And then you'd want a 2022 or later model year for the heat pump for a little bit better efficiency in cold weather.
Yeah, that's correct, Max. One of the big reasons that I started looking a lot more seriously at the Polestar was the fact that next year it will be able to utilize the Tesla network. And even for this year, just within the past month, 2 new charging stations have opened up here in Colorado that address big deficits in the charging network and make it a lot more feasible to get up to all the ski areas and back without any issue.
Yep. Speaking of winter and ski areas, if the range isn't an issue, it's nice that for the same price, at least out the door, you're getting dual motor here compared to a rear-wheel drive Tesla new. Of course, you could get a Model 3 long range for not much more, and the Polestar 2 because you're buying used. Also, there's no incentives on the table. Colorado has no specific used EV incentives. The federal use incentive doesn't apply because this is above 25 grand. So this would still be more expensive when you factor everything in, even as a used option, though it does kind of straddle the line between the Model 3 that you were talking about with Ryan and the Model Y. You mentioned you didn't like the fact that that's a sedan. This is a liftback. It has a little bit more ground clearance. It's got like the black cladding, so it's a little bit more like not really off-road worthy, but maybe capable, or at least looks like it has that kind of more SUV style approach. I mean, it actually is based off an SUV platform. It shares a lot of technology with the Volvo XC40 Recharge. But let's get inside, warm ourselves up, and talk about the interior technology and your impression of the Polestar cockpit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, John, we're in the Polestar 2, and this won't be an unfamiliar space for you. Like you said, you've rented this vehicle before. What do you think of this cockpit, this interior overall?
I really like the layout. To me, it looks a little more premium than what I see in the Tesla. More angles, more corners, maybe a little more conventional looking. So that might be a personal thing with me, easing the transition
Less
from
minimal.
a more conventional car to going to an EV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for one, instead of like Ryan's Model 3 has a stock currently, the new one won't even have that. You'll have to use the screen. This is a smaller screen. I don't, as a tech person, like the fact that it has these big kind of bezels. To me, it's a little bit more old-fashioned looking, but it is nice how familiar it is. I like having the play and pause button, the defroster control. As you can tell that, Polestar influence of the Nordic design that's there.
Yeah, and there's a number of features, like you just pointed out, that sort of bridge the difference between a more conventional design and what you see in the Tesla. Another thing that I like is I'm an Android person, so I look at the screen here and I instantly feel at home. It's all the symbology that I'm used to.
Oh, so you use an Android phone, so the Android system on the car is right at home for you.
There. Yep.
And then I assume you'd like the integration if you sign in with your Google account, that you'd have, all your saved destinations and maps and all of that.
Yes, that's correct.
Let's talk about the pilot system, because it sounds like that would be a very important thing for you. So compared to autopilot, Polestar's pilot, their adaptive cruise control, and their lane centering system, what's been your experience with it when you've driven this car?
My experience has been very good. Adaptive cruise control is big with me. It's both a safety feature and it really takes the stress off longer range driving. Mm-hmm. The Polestar's controls actually are almost identical to what I see in the Tacoma, as far as adaptive cruise control, adjusting the length. And I find that just works pretty seamlessly, and at least in the experience I've had driving the Polestar 2, probably 3 or 4 days, absolutely no issues with the adaptive cruise control. One thing I really like about it, I know the Tesla does this too, but it takes you down to 0 and starts up again. So when you're in stop and go traffic, at most you'd have to just re-engage it.
Yep.
And I think even there's probably a 5 or 10 second cutout where it'll take you down to 0 and start up again.
Yep.
And as long as that happens within 5 seconds, you're rolling again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice that the modern adaptive cruise control systems do that. I've always been impressed at looking from where the grass is greener on the other side about how good Tesla's computer vision is and how well it reads the lanes with its system. That said, I will agree with you that this is a really reliable system, even if it doesn't always reach as highly. It's not going to do like automated lane changes or anything like if you got full autopilot on the Tesla. But I do just yeah, like overall how traditional this car is. I can see how it probably was a great rental experience for you because it's not like asking you to learn a new system. It's not making you open the glove box from the touchscreen. You can just do that the old-fashioned way. So much more traditional things going on there. What are your thoughts of on this whole like setup here?
Yeah, the center console is obviously not a high point with the Polestar 2 as far as being bulky.
Yeah.
I'm 5'11", so I don't feel too constrained with it, but obviously there's a lot of room here that the Polestar has, I'm sorry, the Tesla has, but the Polestar doesn't.
And you pointed out the two cup holders prominently. In Ryan's Model 3, to get one, I have to slide this back. To get both, I have to lift this up.
Yes, that is definitely not a high point of the Polestar experience.
Yeah.
But if I'm driving by myself, it's fine. But two of us, if we go to Starbucks, then that's an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we leave the Polestar interior, we talked a little bit about this, but it sounds like you're a big fan of the driver display here compared to Model 3.
Yeah, that's one of my top reasons for liking the Polestar, is having the turn-by-turn feature in the driver's display directly in front of the driver in his vision, and then off to the right having the Google Maps showing the larger display and giving you a better idea of where you're at. You can also look at all the traffic data over here, potentially pick a different way to go, even though Google Maps will probably be doing that for you. But having two maps up, and this one can be oriented north, this one is oriented towards where you're driving.
Yeah.
And so for me anyway, I find that very satisfying and actually helps me with my driving and piloting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's nice for road tripping. If I plug in my phone with Apple CarPlay, it also will do that on Apple Maps, which I find really cool, where I can do that same thing, bear north here and bear relative to where I'm pointing on this driver display. So that's a really nice affordance you don't get on both the Model Y and 3, which emphasize that one big screen in the center that you mentioned, right? It's not always nice to have to look to the right for. So let's get outside of the car and talk about your impressions on both and which way you're leaning.
Okay, thank you.
All right, John. So at the moment, it sounds like you're an empty nester, right? So you're not going to have a bunch of people in the back of either car, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, so back seat space, cargo space, you mentioned Polestar, you're leaning more because of the lift back, but it sounds like basically it would be two passengers and room for some way to have skis either on the roof or in the car.
Yeah, that's what I'm primarily looking at, throwing skis in the back. And then in the summer, possibly a bike. I haven't actually scoped this to see if I can put a bike in the back.
I can fit a large frame road bike in the back with the seats folded.
Okay, very good. And I think if I bought either car, I would probably fit a bike rack. And I checked, and there are aftermarket bike racks available for both these cars.
There are. I would say Polestar has an official electronic rack, very Euro style. It's like if you don't get it on the car that you buy used, it's like a $3,000 option to install, and with a special 1.25" receiver. So that's probably easier to do in the Tesla. I know people will do in the Polestar, but they try to move you officially in the direction of their electronic hitch, which is expensive.
Yes.
You can do bars on both, but then you're looking at, especially on the Polestar, more compromised range. But anyhow, I just want to touch on those kind of cargo space, other accessory notes. Overall, John, which way are you leaning between going with Tesla, be it a Model 3 or a Y new with all these incentives, or going with a used Polestar 2? What do you think is going to be your interim pick?
First of all, I'd like to say that both of these cars are absolutely great. They both have some outstanding features. What it's really come down to me, just based on a gut feel, is that the Tesla has the pricing and the incentives to make that a very good selection. What I really like about the Polestar is the drivability and I guess the styling, for lack of a better word. And so right now, I'm still up in the air. Depends what I look at last, who I talked to most recently.
Yeah.
But right now, if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably lean towards the Polestar.
Interesting. Over a Model 3 long range with all-wheel drive, just it's worth it for you, the Polestar, with the design and the things you prefer about it.
Yes, I think in the longer term, I'd be happier with the Polestar.
All right. Well, I'm sure folks in the comments can also help you decide and give their reasoning for either side as well. But thanks so much, John, for joining us on this very cold day to talk about these two cars and how they might work. And for someone who lives a lifestyle like yours, who is skiing, lives in Colorado, and is in this price range. I know briefly off camera we were talking about other vehicles like the Subaru Solterra and stuff on the market, and there's a lot of compromises with so many other vehicles. So when you're looking at, it sounds like in your situation, this size of vehicle, these are two of the best options, really.
Yeah, no, wrapping up, I'd like to thank both Max and Ryan for their insight and feedback. Really glad I reached out to you.
Yeah.
And think I've picked up a lot more information that hopefully, well, in some respects, it's made the decision harder, but hopefully when I do make a decision, I'll proceed forward with that.
Yeah, well, Ryan and I are happy to help. So glad you reached out as well, and thanks for coming on. And everyone can watch At a Spec Guide. If you are local or nearby and want to reach out like John, please do. And also, again, please give John more advice to help him decide which way he's going to go. Thank you so much for watching. Ryan's been behind the camera filming and, of course, telling John about the Model 3. I've been Max with At a Spec Guide, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.